I thought you loved me. The woman's voice quivered as she stood in the dimly lit hotel room, clutching her dress to her chest. Her mascara-streaked face was a testament to the tears she had shed. Edward leaned against the bed's headboard, his shirt unbuttoned, a look of disdain plastered across his face. He flicked his wrist towards the stack of cash lying on the floor. "Love?" he scoffed. "Don't fool yourself. Take the money and leave. You knew what this was." The woman didn't move, her fist trembling at her side. "You promised me, Edward. You said I was different, that you cared about me." Edward laughed, his voice cold and sharp. "Promises are like smoke, meant to disappear. Don't waste my time with this nonsense. Pick up the money and get out before I call security." Her heart shattered, but she refused to let him see her crumble. "One day, Edward," she said through clenched teeth, "you would need someone and no one would be there. Mark my words." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving the money untouched. Edward rolled his eyes and reached for his phone. "Drama queens," he muttered, dialing for room service. Edward had clawed his way out of poverty to become one of the wealthiest men in the city. To him, money wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon. He wielded it to control everyone around him, employees, friends, even women. He was a feared and respected businessman, but his arrogance drove away everyone. His employees walked in a constant fear of his wrath, and his neighbors avoided him like a plague. He took pleasure in humiliating others, especially women, whom he treated as disposable. Edward often bragged, "As long as I have money, I will always have power. People don't matter, only wealth does." Edward's need for control extended to his personal life when he met Rose, a quiet and timid woman from a humble village. He saw her as someone he could easily dominate. He charmed her family with his wealth, promising to send her to school and take care of her. "Your daughter will live like a queen," he assured them, his smile masking his true intentions. Rose, though hesitant, agreed to marry him, hoping for a better future. But she quickly realized that Edward's promises were like as fleeting as the smoke from his expensive cigars. The day after their wedding, Rose nervously brought up the topic of continuing her education. "School?" Edward asked, raising an eyebrow. "What for?" "You said you would support me," she reminded him softly. Edward chuckled, shaking his head. "I changed my mind. Your place is here, taking care of the house and the keys we will have. What would you even do with an education?" "But you promised." "Enough," Edward snapped, his tone as harsh as, "You are lucky to live in this house. Don't push your luck." Rose's dreams were crushed. She wasn't allowed to even visit her family, and Edward made it clear that her role was to serve him. Edward's greed knew no bounds. He poured billions into a risky business venture, importing high-end goods he planned to sell for an enormous price. "This deal will make me untouchable," he boasted to his associates. "No one will be able to compete with me." But fate had other plans. The ship carrying Edward's container sank in a violent storm, taking his entire investment with it. When Edward received the news, his world came crashing down. The shock was too much for him to bear, and he collapsed on the spot. Edward woke up in the hospital bed, his body weak and unresponsive. The doctor informed him he had suffered a stroke due to the extreme stress. His speech was slurred, and he couldn't move his right side of his body. For the first time in his life, Edward felt powerless. His so-called friends disappeared. His employees abandoned him. Even his neighbors, whom he had mocked for years, refused to help. Edward, once the king of his world, was now a broken man, utterly alone. While Edward lay in despair, Rose stepped in. Unknown to him, she had been saving money from the excessive allowances he gave her. She had also started a small business selling fabrics and household items to women in the community. Despite the years of neglect and humiliation, Rose chose compassion. She used her savings to pay for Edward's medical bills and hired a therapist to help him recover. One evening, she sat by his bedside holding his hand. "Why are you doing this?" Edward asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rose looked at him, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. "Because you are the father of my children, and because I believe everyone deserves a second chance." Edward wept, overwhelmed by guilt and gratitude. Edward's recovery was slow, but with Rose's support, he began to rebuild his life. He started a small business, working with humility and treating others with kindness. He apologized to Rose and her family, seeking forgiveness for the pain he had caused. Years later, Edward sat in a wheelchair on the porch of their modest home, watching his children play in the yard. He turned to Rose, tears in his eyes. "I thought money was everything," he said, "but I was wrong. Without love and kindness and family, wealth is meaningless." Rose smiled, squeezing his hands. "Now you understand what truly matters." The moral of the story: power and wealth are fleeting, but how we treat others leaves a lasting impact. True strength lies in humility, compassion, and building relationship that endures life storms. What do you think about Edward's journey? Do you believe it's ever too late for someone to change? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you will never miss an update from African Tales by Sharon.